I have a rich husband. I can buy both. I do not recommend doing anything else on your anniversary because we literally never celebrate our anniversary anymore.
Oh.
We only celebrate the Pad's birthday. Anyway, she went on to our website and purchased some 100 classes worth some 10,000 dirhams and paid, right? And I remember waking up one morning and seeing this and being like what is this? Because we were charging 51 dirhams and suddenly someone's paid 10,000, right? What big, where am I trying to go? Who am I trying to prove and to what?
Yeah.
Because after a point, the money in your bank is just monopoly money. You're not spending it. There is an opportunity cost to being busy. There is a huge existential crisis that happens, I think, right after a baby comes along that we do not talk about enough. We've all heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And yet I feel women pour from empty cups every single day.
Welcome to the Sheen Mesh Show. This is where we have conversations about wealth, energetics, money mindset, and how to generate wealth with confidence and ease. Every episode brings you grounded conversations with people who are living this reality. Let's dive in. Welcome to this next episode of Sheen Mesh Show, where I have my dear friend Shazia with me here. I feel like we met as trainer-student, do you call it? Client, trainer.
Yeah.
And then we've bonded over so many different things, of course, about body positivity, fitness, curly hair.
Yes, which currently I've straightened, but yes, originally.
Yeah, but motherhood and so much more.
Yeah.
It's always such a nice, easy chat with you, Shaz. But I think more than anything, you're one of the few people who I feel is on the same journey with making things happen with the right attitude, with the right mindset. Now you've got motherhood to add to the mix of things that you're dealing with. And I'm so happy to have you here on the show to speak about all things that I just mentioned in a very raw, honest, casual way. So welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. I want to know if money has been a part of like growing up in terms of conversations. Was it something that you were conscious of as you grew? Was it part of conversations around you? I just want to know a little bit of the backstory before I go into more recent questions.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think growing up, it wasn't ever really a conversation, but we lived a very comfortable life. Now, I think you don't know you're living a comfortable life until you grow up and you're like, oh, I have lived a comfortable life in hindsight, right? And you kind of understand the world around you and kind of what it means to have means versus not have means, right? But I remember like at some point, so my dad has really struggled. So while he was growing up, they started living in like this one small kind of, we'll say studio now, but it was like almost like a chawl with 6 of them living together. And so that's where he's come from, right? He's really seen the hardships of life. But even when they were growing up, they thought they were fine. I think everyone thinks they're fine growing up, right? And I remember one day we were on holiday and like, my mom was shopping and I was shopping with her and she was like, should I buy this or should I buy this, And I was like, why don't you just buy both? And she looked at me and she was like, yeah, you're right. I have a rich husband. I can buy both. And that was like the first time I'd kind of been introduced to the concept of what is rich, what is poor. Like I didn't really understand this.
Yeah.
I think growing up in India, you become almost immune because you're growing up sitting in your car and you're looking outside the window and you're seeing people who are on the road, like children who are on the road, same age as you, But because it's just so normalized, you don't question it. You don't question why me, why them. Versus like today, I know when like my friends' kids will go back, they'll be like, where is their didi? You know? So these things, I think, growing up in India, they don't come naturally to us. But then as you kind of grow up, they become conversations. And so my dad started talking to us about like money and investments. I think once I was a little bit older, 15, 16. And in hindsight, I think it was quite late because you used to always say, you have to understand the value of money. Money doesn't grow on trees. But these were just lines that I heard. They didn't really mean, they still like now I understand, okay, you have to understand the value of money.
Yeah.
But back then I was like, what do you mean? What do you
Yeah.
mean the value of money? Like 100 rupees is 100 rupees, you know?
Yeah.
What else are you trying to say? So I don't think we were ever truly introduced to here's what money is, here's what lack is, here's what abundance is, here are the mindsets around it, here's how you invest, here's what you do with your money. That wasn't really a concept while I was growing up.
Wow, that's super, because from obviously the outside, I know your dad and your aunt both to be super successful, and to know that they came from that background is even more inspiring.
Yeah.
So you must have been privy to that journey or that trajectory in a conscious or subconscious way.
Yeah.
So it's really good that the lack wasn't, the conversation, the ongoing conversation, which it could have easily been. And also from the India kind of tangent that you were touching upon earlier, sometimes people tend to become hyper, almost guilty of the privilege that they have as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's really nice to have the healthy kind of relationship that I think you have. We'll unpack that a little more. So then you were working, I know, previously with different
my dad.
companies,
With
with,
my dad.
your dad.
Yeah.
And then you trained to be a Pilates instructor, always knowing you wanted to own studios, or tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Pilates and fitness was never kind of on the cards for me at all. I was a psychology major, and right after that, I kind of wanted to get into counseling and coaching, which is actually an interesting money topic again.
Yes.
And I wanted to get into coaching, not coaching, like therapy and counseling for the underprivileged, right?
Right.
Because that's just what I felt like I could make an impact for.
Yeah.
And I thought of like going to hospitals and like counseling families and stuff. And one of my cousins who used to work with my dad at that point came to me and said, you're going to go into these hospitals, and a lot of the problems people have are that they just don't have enough money to even be able to pay the bills. What are you going to do about that? You're going to help them mentally and psychologically, but you can't actually financially go out and give money to people.
Yeah.
Versus your dad has built this organization which is 700 people strong within the company plus the contractors. And if you come in and work here, you have an opportunity to actually impact all of their lives if you work in the HR department. Because now you can create policies that impacts each one of their lives and their families' lives, including insurance, including healthcare, including all of these other things that you cannot do outside of here. So that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Which is why HR was never something I planned to do, but then I kind of got into. And I had a very, very inspiring first boss who wasn't my father, thank God, because when I started in his company, my father and I did not have the most functional relationship. I think it was like most, sometimes you have stresses in your relationships, and he thought I could do better and I could do more and expected more. But anyway, I had this great boss, and he said, we're going to take this bottom line focused company and make it a people driven company. And to be fair, I think my dad had always treated his people really well, but they were never the focus of the company.
Yeah.
The focus was always the numbers, right? And then I came in and we started making people the focus, because the idea was if your people are happier, your numbers are going to get better.
Yeah.
So I was the happiness officer of the organization. And that's where kind of my career and my journey started. Pilates happened because when I moved to... I got married to my husband, Abbas, and I moved to Dubai, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And that's when my aunt, Yasmin, she told me that, why don't you open my studio there? And the biggest conversations, or rather biggest arguments my dad and I would always have when I was working with him was... he would always tell me, you're only looking at one part of the business. I'm looking at the whole business. You don't have the bird's eye view. And one of the most important things when you're looking at a business is you have to look at the finances.
Right.
You are currently not doing that. You're only looking at the people, and you're asking me for finances to look at the people. You're not looking at the larger picture, right? And I would always say, one day when I have my own business, you'll see how I do both and I manage both.
Yeah.
So in my head, and I guess coming from a business family also, it's like in your head, it's a given. You're going to start your own business.
I always knew I'd be self-employed.
Exactly, right? And you also see the the fact that, I mean, there are advantages,
Yeah.
disadvantages too, but
Yeah.
advantages of just being able to manage your own time
Yeah, that's a
however you
huge
want
one,
it, right?
yeah.
And so when I came here and Yasmin was like, start my studio there, I was like, here's my opportunity to have my own business,
Yeah.
you know? And that's when she threw the curveball at me saying, you have to be an instructor if you want to run my studio.
Right.
And I was like, but why? Like,
I just want the business.
Yeah, I just want to run the business, you know, which, by the way, is what most Pilates studios are doing today
Yeah.
in Dubai. And she turned around and said, no, you will never have the true connect with your clients. You will never have the true know-how, and your trainers and instructors will never look up to you because you will always just be the investor.
Yeah.
You will never be the actual true boss. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the person they look up to.
The subject matter expert.
Exactly. So that's how I fell into Pilates or rose into Pilates. Went to the US, studied for over 2 years in a distance learning course, went back there 4 times. And I mean, it completely changed my life. So that's how I fell into Pilates.
Wow. And did you enjoy it naturally? I mean, so it was a win-win, or was it something that you felt kind of, okay, you have to make it happen?
No, I fell in love with it because I thought first of movement as something that was just for fitness. But then I figured out, and that's how I guess you, me, and Saket also have connected, that movement can be used as a means to healing pain.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
that was the game changer for me, because I was like, I can literally take people's pain away by speaking. I'm just speaking, they're moving, and their pain goes away. Like, that's magic.
Yeah, I have to give a side note,
Yes.
and maybe you don't know that I speak about you behind your back in this context. We were training a lot during COVID together on Zoom,
Yes.
off Zoom. And if you remember, I had my second meniscus tear. I don't even remember which knee it was in now because, I mean, that's what I'm going towards. And I credit our sessions for saving me a surgery. And I often say to people, look, you're going to have the surgery done and then you're going to be asked to do rehab with Pilates. Just do the Pilates first. If you need the surgery later, you'll know if you need it.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
thank you very much. You're awesome at what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate
And
that.
you always get a mention anytime anyone has a pain issue
I
that
love
they bring
that.
up. Yeah.
I love that.
Yes. Important to mention context. So, right. Then you have your business, and I really want to go deep into what it was like the first few years coming up to now. Was it what you had hoped for? Was it like, I've seen you obviously only from the outside, managing it with a smile. I know there's always like fires you're fighting, but fires you're putting out. But what is it like from your eyes?
There's a lot of different parts to it, I think. So, back story. While we were preparing to open, the pad and the studio, I was doing a lot of research on entrepreneurship, leadership, how to manage teams, because I was like, I'm going to show my dad, you know, how I do both. And at that time, I had read a lot about, or I'd heard this podcast actually, which said that people who fail in their first business are much more likely to succeed at all the others because they've now, seen the worst of it and they've learned so much. And people who succeed in their first business are much less likely to succeed in the following businesses because they don't know how to handle failure. So in my head, I was like, if I fail at this, it'll be really good for me. I actually started.
There's a saying as well, right? Fail first, fail fast.
Fail fast, yeah. Fail fast, something like that. Correct.
That, yeah.
So I was like, you know what? If I fail at the first one, it'll be good for me. But then I saw the investment that went into it, and I was like, I cannot fail at this. It's too expensive to fail at opening a Pilates studio.
Yeah.
So I said, no, we're going to give it everything we've got, as you do, And then, of course, I'm working with my husband.
Yeah.
So that there's the whole other dimension of the first few years, honestly, were incredible. Because our marriage, the foundation became building something together. And that is a very, very strong foundation to have within a relationship.
I mean, it could go either way.
It could.
Yeah.
And after a few years, it started to become a little bit the other way as well. And we had a few rough years in the middle because we're very different as people.
Yeah.
But I think the business benefits from having two very different people,
For
right?
sure.
So the first, we started in 2018, August. I was also new to the city. We opened the pad on our first anniversary.
Wow.
So 11th August 2017, I moved and got married. 11th August 2018, the pad opened its doors.
Wow. Literally a year later.
Literally.
Wow.
I do not recommend doing anything else on your anniversary because we literally never celebrate our anniversary anymore.
Oh.
We only celebrate the pad's birthday. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we opened the studio and the initial response was great because we had Yasmin's name on board.
Yes.
So touch wood, from month one, we broke operationally even.
Wow.
And I'm very proud of that.
Of course.
Of course, then the second year is when, so first year passed, just your struggles, getting to know how things work, getting to understand this market and adjusting your, policies and such, and prices as well. And then second year happened is when you start to grow and build, and that's when COVID hit
Yes.
in our second year.
Yes.
So it was quite a setback, of course. We were shut for 3 months, but UAE being UAE, like all the landlords gave rent rebate. At least we were very lucky in that sense. So we weren't paying rent for the studio being shut. Everybody at that point, all the instructors went online to do live classes on Instagram, and we did too.
Yes.
But a dear friend at that time told me, she's like, so what's next? And I'm like, I don't know. We're just going to wait to open. She's like, how are you going to pay salaries next month? And I said, I'm going to have to make money of some. Like, we had just had a really big sale, Ramadan sale, because it was right before Ramadan, I remember.
Yes.
And then we had gone into lockdown. So I had just enough money to sustain for the next 1 month. And then we were out, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I need to figure something out. So we were the first studio that started online classes.
Yes.
And the first question was, why are people going to pay to come to Zoom when you have so many, literally 20, 30 people that you would know doing live sessions for free? But we said, no, people want human interaction,
100%.
So we started these Zoom sessions. We set the price at 51 dirhams, and then everybody started doing the same thing as well. And all of our clients, including you and Sakir, jumped on board saying, we want to, everybody wanted to see someone. We wanted to connect with someone. We didn't just want to be looking at a screen anymore.
Yeah, I was doing one-on-ones and it was superb.
Yeah.
It was very effective, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that also showed me, because I always thought, no, you had to be in person.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I started training people around the world, not just in Dubai. I started training people in Kuwait, in the US, in the UK, and all of them saw great results. And I said, I don't need to be in the same city as you. I can just do online classes, So for us, COVID was that big game changer.
Wow.
And I still remember there was this one day, it's a little bit of a side story, but one of my Yasmin's closest friends, who ironically Zeenat is going to her nursery right now.
Yeah.
And her mom was in India for a surgery in Bombay. And COVID hit and everything went into lockdown. So like Yasmin called me and said, can she live in your house in the same building? We have a house there.
Yeah.
So I said, of course, it's this lady's mom. I've known her since I was a child. She lived in the house ended up being 3 months. And Bev kept calling me saying, can I pay you rent? I was like, are you crazy? Like, she's like, your mother's like my mother. Don't be silly.
Yeah.
So as a thank you, she went on to our website and purchased some 100 classes worth some 10,000 dirhams and paid, right? And I remember waking up one morning and seeing this and being like, what is this? Because we were charging 51 dirhams and suddenly someone's paid 10,000, right?
Yeah.
And I remember opening my bank account, Kalyani, like the studio account, and there was 10,000 dirhams, only 10,000 dirhams in the account. And I realized that if she had not given me that, we would have been at zero.
Oh my.
Right? But because that 10,000 came in because of blessing, literally, it was just blessings.
Yeah, but it's paid forward. I mean, the way you handled the situation as well. Otherwise, you could have been a little commercial about it.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. But that, and so I've actually never put in money because of that. If that was the day, I would have had to put in money. But because that happened, we never had to put in any money.
I was just about to ask you how you manage keeping the family expenses or family accounts. Do you keep a very clear line between business, family?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's something I've learned from my dad.
Yeah.
He said, he always says, treat yourself, pay yourself like you're an employee of the company and treat yourself like you're the owner of the company, because the buck always stops with you, but it doesn't mean you can take money out whenever you want to.
Right.
So both Abbas and I draw a salary every month from the
Nice.
pad. We pay ourselves first,
Yeah.
except for during COVID when we didn't get paid.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we pay ourselves first. And that whether the month is profit making, loss making, we get paid. It's not like, okay, we've not done that well this month. It's like if there was someone else in our place, a manager or another instructor, they would get paid, so we get paid. So we always get paid.
Superb.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of the motivation starts dwindling, right? Otherwise, you're like, okay, I'm putting in these reps, putting in these hours, but there was something else that came up on the personal front, so I haven't gotten paid while I'm paying all my employees, etc. So it gets very
Absolutely.
murky
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
But what a superb side story, because it's quite something to say that you've never had to put in money, Shaz, that
Yeah.
from day one, the business has sustained itself.
Sustain itself.
I want to talk a little bit about a lot of us, I think. I can probably safely say, me, you, the audience that's listening, are all from privileged backgrounds, let's say
Absolutely.
comparatively, right? I can safely say that as a blanket statement. There comes this sense of wanting to be self-made. And this is something that I think we've had a discussion about some time ago. And my learning, just to also share that in the last few years, has been that this obsession with wanting to be self-made is such an added pressure that also, if you unpack it a little bit, who is self-made in the end? Everyone gets some referral, everyone gets their first job. If anything, thanks to the support of their parents who send them to the right school, or a recommendation that they got to do X degree, whatever it is, there's always someone you can thank for being where you are, right?
Yeah.
So how far do you take this concept? Has this been a weight that you've had to deal with on your shoulders? Yeah, I want to know how you've dealt with this.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially for us with privileged backgrounds. There was this really beautiful video I had watched once, which had like this person coming from a very meager like background where they didn't really have much food to eat on the table, they didn't really go to school, didn't really have all of those privileges and just the basic rights that we also get to have clean water, right? And they work super, super, super hard, like 12 to 13 hours a day, construction work, and they are really putting in the work and doing everything they can, not taking days off, not lazying around, not lacking anything. And then you have another person on this side who's been to a really good school, a really good college, had a lot of things, of course, their own share of struggles, but has, like you said, all the doors opened for them.
Yeah.
And then at one point it comes to work and they've worked 8 or 10 hours and they've come back and they're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And, all of these things. And then one day you see this person saying, I'm self-made,
Yeah.
because they've started their own business and they've done their own thing. But the truth is, both these people have just started the race at different points.
Yes.
The starting point is different. If you're running a marathon of life, one person starts here and one person starts here. Your finish lines may also be very different, but
Yeah.
your starting points are different. So this concept of self-made, to me, in today's day and age, where we exist with so much privilege, is flawed.
Yeah.
Right? There is just no such thing. The fact that we're here today sitting here having this conversation, like you said, is because all of those people did all of those things for us, which is why we're sitting here and having this conversation and not struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table because we have to work 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think of it now, and it's taken me time, because there is also so much of what you've seen in your house growing up that affects how you think, right? So while there was never a conversation of lack in my house, there was always hustle,
Yes.
right? So I've grown up with a father who has come from almost nothing and has made it really big in his life
Yeah.
today. And he's hustled to get there,
Yeah.
right? So the inner conversation that happens within me is I gotta hustle.
Yeah.
I gotta hustle to get somewhere.
Yes.
I don't know where I'm trying to get. But I
Yeah.
gotta hustle, right?
Yeah.
And the world also tells you that in school you're pitted one against the other. I went to one of the best schools in Bombay, Dhirubhai Ambani,
Yeah.
which took all the best students from all the different schools, put them in one place. And then we were hustling against each other
Yeah.
to get into the best colleges.
Yeah.
Because Cambridge doesn't take 6 people from one school, they only
Yeah.
take one.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah.
Society and as well as my house was this hustle mentality, right? And so I kind of catch myself every now and again.
Yeah.
A lot at the beginning, a little less now, saying, okay, I gotta go, I gotta say yes to this, I gotta say yes to that. It's like, don't say no, because otherwise you're missing out on opportunity.
Yes.
Opportunity that could have made you really big. What big, where am I trying to go? Who am I trying to prove and to what?
Yeah.
These are questions I ask myself really often, which helps me say no, protect my time, protect my energy, and remember that for me, my goal is two-pronged. One is to be as happy as I can possibly be. And two is to create as much positive impact as I possibly can to my family, friends, and to the world at large.
Wow.
Right? So if I'm able to do these two things, everything else will kind of fall into place. I'm not trying to prove anything else to anyone else.
So, I mean, the celebrity clients or whatever other kind of races that you find yourself in, is that an internal dialogue still, or is that an external dialogue even?
No, it is very, of course, when you go onto Instagram, how many followers, how many likes, how many views, the numbers, they've really, really made life about showing numbers, right? How
Yeah.
much, how many, how much, how many people have seen it and viewed it and liked it, how many followers do you have will be based on how much you will get paid,
Yes.
etc. But we have to very consciously pull ourselves away, saying, how does it matter and what does it matter for? Because after a point, the money in your bank is just monopoly money. You're not spending it.
This is exactly what I tell all my clients because, I mean, if that number on the screen has so much power on you, then you're outsourcing your power to a number on the screen.
Exactly.
Which is not doing anything, to be honest.
Exactly.
Have you always had this clarity, Shaz?
No, absolutely not.
Tell us what got you here, please.
Oh, God. So many things. So many things. I think the worst times of life give you the most clarity.
What was that for you?
We had a really rough patch in our marriage.
Okay.
And it was on very, very shaky grounds.
Okay.
And it made me reconsider a lot of things in my life, made me question a lot of things in our life. And it just got me to the conclusion of what is truly important and what my priorities really are. Because we are just, there's constant stimulation coming in from different sides. This is important. This is important. And even when you go on Instagram, like you'll see, 30 people you follow going to the gym and absolutely smashing it and doing pull-ups and push-ups and having these sick bodies. And then you'll have these other women who are like doing it all, who are doing motherhood and who are also doing business and who are talking about it. And then you'll have these, people like Yasmin who are like working out, doing motherhood, doing business and hitting like 1 million followers and doing talks. And like she never stops hustling.
Yeah.
She never stops hustling. She's a hustler. Till date, she's 53 years old. She's a hustler. She will fly back from Dubai, land at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m., she will be at a class at Geo Mall. At 10 a.m., she'll be on Barkha Dutt's podcast. At 12 p.m., she'll be doing her social media shoot. And at 4 p.m., she'll be treating Katrina Kaif. Like, that is her life. You know
and
what
then
I mean?
in the evening, her kids will have
And
the
then in
time.
the evening, she will be with her kids before she goes to sleep. And she'll do a family night with her kids. So she's like one woman who does it all. But anyway, I feel like we're constantly... And I recently had this conversation with her and I was like, there is an opportunity cost to everything.
Okay, tell me. When you see a role model, I would say, or an inspiration, let's say, so close to home, within your home, if I could say, within the family, as inspiring as it is, it puts a lot of pressure on you being this hyper-productive self as well. I've grown up with someone who was also hyper-productive until today. My mom is the one I'm speaking about. And There's no stopping. There are so many chances to stop, but they prefer not to. And I think we take a little bit of that nervous system memory from them as well. So yeah, I want to know what the conversation was, if you're comfortable sharing it.
Yeah, it was
the
honestly,
opportunity cost.
it was me telling her there is an opportunity cost to being busy,
Yes.
which is not being able to be present. She's like, but I'm present. I was like, you, and she is. I will
Right.
give her that. She truly, like, when she comes to see my daughter, she's not on her phone. She's not worried about what her post is doing. She's not worried about her clients. She is there.
Really?
Right? She really, really manages to be there. And she was not always like this. She was very attention deficit disorder types, like constantly like one thing to another thing to another thing. She has made herself slow down, calm down, be present, gotten other people to do her work. And I think that is so important also, right?
Right.
And that's something that, like, you read the books like Buy Back Your Time and stuff, is the biggest fallacy also, and that's, I saw her doing that for years, is you have to do everything.
Yeah.
You can do what you love doing if you can afford it. Get other people to do what you don't like to do, so you still manage to be as productive as if you were doing it.
Yeah, but then that comes with a layer of reviews. That's something that is part of my journey currently, which is why very relevant conversation. And the reviews sometimes, or just, managing is, or accepting the 90%, 80%, whatever output that you get, and not micromanaging is a part
So
of
it's two
this.
things, right? Again, one is very simply, you say, it's going to take up more of my time now, so this is going to take up less of my time in the future.
Yeah.
It's like they say, short-term pain for long-term gain, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give it that extra time now, and you have to be prepared for it. And the second thing is, you have to be prepared for 70%. If you get 80 and 90, you're lucky.
Yeah.
But you be okay with 70%, right?
Yeah.
You go in with that mentality and mindset. And this is something I think I've learned from my daughter, which is like when we travel with her, for example, I go in prepared that everything is going to be a blooming mess.
Exactly.
My clothes are going to get dirty. Her clothes are going to get dirty.
Yeah.
There's going to be stuff, food all over the seat. So it does not bother me because I'm already prepared for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I was trying to make sure everything is clean, every time something fell, it would create that irritation in my head, which would make me an irritated person, and then she would have an irritated mother.
Yeah.
So if you expect from your people that you're hiring that I'm only going to get 70%, you're not irritated. You're happy someone else is doing the work.
Yeah, at least the 70%. So you're not starting from zero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is how, honestly, today I have gotten myself really far out of the business.
Right. But then before I go into the motherhood piece, which I want to dive deeper into, do you time block very strictly? Which then allows you to slow down. What I mean is that the structure allows you to be present. So you spend a little bit of time with the structuring, the time blocking, this is my time, so the phone's away. And then when it's time to be on the phone or post content, whatever it is when it will come out.
I think a big part of my life is scheduling. So it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like I block time. It just,
Okay.
if it's not on my schedule, it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
I'm very, very much like an organized person. I have become
Yeah.
through my work.
Yeah.
But am I would definitely like to be more present when I'm with my daughter. I would definitely I think we can always do better.
Yeah.
But yes, I think what's also happened now, because she used to be at home all day, right? So then I would get about maybe 4 or 5 hours with her in the day, which ends up being like for 4 or 5 hours, I'm not, well, I could, but I don't. I'm not only with her.
Yeah.
But now that she goes to nursery in the morning and then she has a nap, I only really have 3 to 7, out of which 2 hours she's at the park. So I really only have 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So I make the most out of those 2 hours. Right?
Perfect.
And I feel like the limited time forces you to also give more quality to that time. If you had just
100%.
too much of one thing, you don't appreciate it.
100%.
So I do time block, but I really wish I did better with my posting. I'm so bad at it.
You're so amazing. All your posts are so well written, and I feel that especially the pad is different to your personal
Yeah.
posting, and that might help maybe in not making it commercial. So every post is so beautifully written. You have a hidden or not so hidden talent that you
No,
must.
I love writing, but
Yeah.
I've since I've had my daughter, I've found it very hard to find a balance between being present on social media and being present in life. So most of the time I just choose to be present in life, because if I'm present on social media, that takes up so much time.
It takes up so
and
much
so I
time.
have to do it for the pad because that's my business.
Yeah.
And so there's a team dedicated to it. And I've quite often thought maybe I should have a team for my personal page, but then it's not personal anymore. Right?
You're
So,
doing fab with the
thank you.
personal page. Whatever
I'll
you're
take it.
doing, whenever you
Thank
get
you.
time, is what you need to be doing,
Right.
because it reaches the right people like
Correct.
me. But I feel
So are you, by the way. I
Really?
love, yeah, that's how I got onto your, She Invests. And
Thank you.
I love, the abundance walks that you talk about, and
Thank
the
you.
mentality of, and that's when I actually started thinking about what is really my philosophy of money, because of a lot of your stories that you post.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So you have an almost 2-year-old,
Yes.
beautiful daughter, and I feel, again, I sound a bit of a fangirl, but we can be in a mutual fan club
Yes.
maybe. But you've dealt with the journey so beautifully, babe.
Thank you.
You got back to work, I would say early-ish,
Yeah,
as
3
a
months
business
in.
owner would have to. But there's a lot of joy. Like, I got back to doing work for a few hours at about 2.5 months after having my daughter, and it was a joyful place to come back to, because it wasn't like a maternity break and
Yeah.
now I had to come back with boss or the job I didn't like. How was it like for you? Was motherhood a very conscious, kind of planned decision? You knew what you were getting into. You expected maternity to be a certain way, etc., etc. Like, tell me how it was.
So I had Zenith when I was 32.
Yeah.
32. And I think it was a really good age. In my plan when I was 15, I was going to have my first child at 27. But I'm really glad that did happen.
Yeah.
Because I think at 32, I was very aware of myself.
Yeah.
I had just come out of my ayahuasca retreat. I was in the most zen and calm place I had been in a really long time.
Is it as trippy as they say
It is trippier.
Yeah.
It is trippier.
Trippier.
It is nothing like you can describe or imagine.
Okay,
It is
okay.
beyond anything that
Okay.
we can describe in words. But I came back feeling like, throughout life I felt like we have some dirt in a jar and that, like, of water, and it's just being moved. And after ayahuasca, I felt like someone had put the jar down and it was all just settling. And I could
Nice.
see. And it was so clear to me that, like, in one of my ceremonies, I'd actually felt being pregnant. I'd actually felt having a son. So maybe at some point I will.
Yeah.
But I came back, and the next period cycle, I was pregnant. So I call her my ayahuasca baby.
Yeah.
Literally. And she's
just waiting for all the gunk to be cleared
yes,
out.
Yes. And like so many people will tell me, and of course, everybody thinks their child is the best.
Yeah.
But so many people will come and say, she's a really happy baby, like, touch wood. She
Yeah.
is, and very friendly, really outgoing, will run around, smile, say hi to people, give flying kisses to people, like, just emitting love.
Yeah.
Does that mean she doesn't have tantrums? No, of course she does. But like 80% of the time, she's emitting love to people around her.
Yeah.
And I truly feel it's because I had her when my system was so calm and peaceful,
Yeah.
that even after I had her, yes, there were times I stressed about how much, not times, there was the first 3 months, I was obsessed with my milk and how much I was pumping because she wouldn't latch.
Yeah.
So I went through that. But I truly enjoyed every part. So, like, also, I very much call myself an Instagram mom. And I'm very proud of it also.
Okay.
Like, you see so many things and advice on Instagram about parenting. And a lot of it is really good if you
To be
get
honest,
the good
it
one,
is actually, yeah.
Like, there's some advice that's not good, but that doesn't show up on my feed because
Yeah.
my algorithm gets me.
Yeah.
So the really good advice comes up on my feed and I've been following it. And like about, so I read Montessori Baby before I started. So from the age while she was born, I was like, she's going to talk to me.
Yeah.
She's going to tell me what she likes and what she doesn't. I just have to listen.
Yeah.
She's just not talking in words.
Yeah.
So from a very young age, I was talking to her. I was interacting with her. I was communicating with her. And when my homeopath recently saw me and she's like, she's a very, very active, very outgoing baby. And she's like, she's going to start talking really soon because of the way you talk to her. So I've never treated her like a child.
Yeah.
Like you love her like a child, but I always talk to her very normally. And this is all stuff I've gotten from Instagram, you
Yeah.
know, as well. So I feel like one of the things that I read was, if I wish someone had told me to enjoy the first 6 months or 1 year because it goes by so fast. I really enjoyed my first
Superb.
year. I don't like look back and say, oh my God, I was so stressed. And I see my friends who are around me who are. And I tell them, listen, this is going to go by really fast. Can you
Yeah.
please enjoy it?
Yeah.
But everybody is on their own journey, you
Yeah.
know. But I really enjoyed my first year of motherhood. It was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
There are times when there were 3 times specifically that I can remember that I was like, I want to return her. I'm done.
Yeah.
One night I literally came crying out of her room. She had been crying for 2 hours. I came out and my nanny had just
Sleep
walked
training?
in. No, not sleep training. Just some other random night
Right.
where she refused to sleep. Actually, it might have been
Yeah.
during the sleep training. I walked out of her room. My nanny came in. I went to my husband. I started crying in bed and I was like, I'm done. I want out. I'm done. So he's just like staring at me and I was like, you think I'm joking? Not joking. He said, there's nothing either of us can do about it. And I was like, can you just shut up for 10 minutes? Let me cry. I'll get
Yeah.
over it. And 10 minutes later, I was fine. I went back into the room. I sent my nanny to sleep and I dealt with it for the rest of the night.
Nice.
You know? And like even yesterday, as early as yesterday, I had a full working day from
Yeah.
morning. And I finished at 7 p.m. So I only had 7 to 8 to hang with her, which is my
Yeah.
1 hour.
Yeah.
You don't get to decide what mood your child is in for the 1 hour you have
Yeah.
available.
And you're tired as well by then.
I was exhausted
Yeah.
and she was cranky AF. So at the end of a long day, to have a cranky child, I was like, I just want to, just chill and be loved by you.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to decide that.
No.
So yesterday was like one of those days where I was like, you know what? It's okay to not feel like my baby is the best every single day. It's fine.
Yeah.
Some days you're like, I don't want to hang out with you. And it's okay.
The best thing is, Shaz, there are so many things like, I wanted to return her. It's okay to say or think like this. You just say it as it is. Everyone else thinks about it. No one says it. It's exactly what
But
most
that's
people
the point.
think
I
it
know
is.
everyone thinks
Yeah.
it, right? The other day, one of my friends was telling me, she's a really close friend of mine, and she's like, I want to hang out with my son so much, but also I don't want to hang out with him. Does that make me a bad mother? And I was like, it absolutely does not. It's the
Yeah.
most normal. We have to normalize not wanting to hang out with our kids. Some days,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay. Like, do you want to hang out with your spouse every single day? No, some days you're just like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I just want to be alone. It's
Very
just
much
because they're your child, you don't have to be with them all the time. You know what I mean?
I think this is so therapeutic and so relevant because when I had my son, I was about 29, few years earlier than I think would have been optimal, like you said as well. But you don't get to decide this. I feel birth
Sure.
and death happens when it has to. And you kind of, I was very, very hard on myself with counting minutes, and I was building something at the time. I did have a first business that didn't do very
Yeah.
well. And being just very calculative about time and bringing that, even though I enjoyed the motherhood side of things a lot, I feel that that's a pressure that I've always had. Also because I had a working mom who was pulled in different directions, and maybe that's some of the not the guilt, but the emotion that I bring into my motherhood as to wanting to be available for them. But then when that becomes wanting to be available 24/7, then you put so much more pressure on yourselves
Absolutely.
and leave no room for yourself or your relationship with your spouse to carry on flourishing, thriving, or simply just carry
Existing.
on. Yeah, just carrying on.
Existing, yeah.
Did you have any of these pressures? Because for you, going back to work means having a schedule, having clients, having team meetings. So it is quite time bound, I would say.
Yeah.
It is also not very work from home situation versus others, which I think is a better bet.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're constantly
oh
like
my
doing
God.
both. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is time a big kind of thing that you're constantly managing?
So my advantage and disadvantage is that my husband is also my partner at work.
Yes.
So the advantage was that even though I technically went back to teaching 3 months after I gave birth, I didn't really go back to the managing of the studio
Sure.
as much
Yeah.
because he was doing that.
Sure. That's a lot of the bulk of the
It
work.
is.
Yeah.
It is. So I would kind of go in, teach a couple of hours a day, come back out. Sometimes it was 1 hour, sometimes it was 4 hours.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that much, right?
Yeah.
So I really had that advantage. The disadvantage was now he was managing his bit and my bit.
Yes.
And anyway, I think after a child comes into the picture, I won't say all, but most marriages suffer, right? Most spousal relationships suffer.
For sure.
Mostly because I think there's many different reasons. You cannot, I think we need a whole podcast episode just to talk about why.
Yeah.
But for me specifically, I started taking on a lot of the I will take care of baby, and
Yeah.
he started taking care of I will take care of business.
Yeah.
Right? And then he didn't take care of baby and I didn't take care of business. So we were kind of living parallel lives
Yeah.
In the same bedroom.
Yeah.
And not really connecting at all.
Yeah.
It kind of leads to a little bit of an existential crisis, right? For the mother,
Yeah.
especially, being like, suddenly there's this baby in my life who's taking up all of my mental space.
Yeah.
My spouse doesn't really seem to get it because he's carrying on with his life as it was before the baby.
Yeah.
With like, oh yeah, I have a little bit of time now in my day to be cute with this new addition to our lives versus
Yeah.
my entire life has moved upside
Yeah.
down to make space for this tiny human who's the biggest part of my life
Yeah.
now. And is this all there is?
Exactly.
Is this how my life is going to be? There is a huge existential crisis that happens, I think, right after a baby comes along that we do not talk about enough.
Yeah.
That leads to a lot of disconnection and discord within marriage that needs to be
Yes.
spoken about more. Not in terms of therapy, just in terms of let's sit down together and talk about it. And you know what? You take up more responsibility without me having to ask,
Yes.
which is a really big piece of the pie.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I know because like I was not in the business, he was taking over my share.
Yeah.
So we both felt like it's okay. You're doing my bit there and I'm doing your bit here.
Yeah.
But it led to a very big discord.
Yes, this has been a big part of my journey as well, where in the first year after having my son, we both were out of jobs. So even the work kind of figuring out discovery was added to having a
pressure,
child, and no certain income coming in. So
Yeah.
we were kind of building things. Both of us were investing in businesses, no income coming in. And that just leads to so much, the discord just amplified. And I would say, you know, hypnotherapy, etc., says that a lot of the experiences that you experience now come from beliefs that were set in when you were much younger, before the age of 7. So maybe something happened to attract this into my reality, but this was definitely the transformation, I would say, the first year. And I had to really dig deep
Yeah.
to know and to believe that there was more, that
Yeah.
this could be rebuilt, the relationship, the money, the life,
All of it.
to then go past it. So,
For sure.
with, you know, what you do as well, I think part of the existential crisis also comes from feeling so new and foreign in your body. So with your work, was that, I'm sure that was very intertwined.
Yeah.
From the outside, again, I see a very positive side of it, of you owning your body. How is it on the inside?
I have become much kinder to my body. I think the conversation dialed down a lot in my head after ayahuasca itself about
Yeah.
how I was looking. But since I've had my daughter, I've become super conscious that my body image is going to be her body image. And that's with everything, right? They don't listen to what we say, they observe what they see.
Yeah.
So I saw my mom looking in the mirror and looking at her tummy and saying, I've put on weight, and sucking it in.
Yeah.
And standing on the scale every single day and saying, oh my God, I've put on 1 kilo, I'm not going to eat dinner tonight.
Yeah. I read your
Right?
post.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was like, that is not going to be my daughter's reality.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, that cannot be my reality.
Yeah.
So even today, I really try not to check the scale every day, but it's hilarious because now Zeenat comes into the room every day and she'll be like, Mama, and she'll step on the scale. She'll be like so excited because I've primed her to step on the scale and be like, I'm so strong.
Yeah.
So she'll come into the scale room every day and she'll be like, Mama, Mama. And then I'll be like, Zeeni, you're so strong. And she'll like clap. And then she'll be like,
Your turn.
And I'm like, I don't look down.
Yeah.
I just step on the scale and I'm like, look at how strong I am. And then she'll
Yeah.
start clapping. So
Yeah.
that to me, and the other thing I've started doing now because I've started strength training this year,
Yes.
is I literally will touch my stomach and I'll be like, thank you for everything you've done for me.
Superb.
And that verbal, like out loud, thank you for
Wow.
everything you've done for me. You've held my child here. You've, supported me through, I don't even know how many period cycles.
Yeah.
You've supported me through the death of my loved ones.
Yeah.
You've gone up and down and always just digested my food
Yeah.
and not like made me dizzy. So thank you, because I feel like we are so mean to our bodies, and I have
Yeah.
been so mean to my bodies and rejected it for so long that I need to just start accepting it and loving it, because things move and change with love, not with hate.
Yeah. But you're looking absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
And has like the rush to get back to things, especially being in the fitness industry. Does that get to you? I mean, that's also so unreal. And so, it's the reality for some people to bounce back and go straight back into their genes. But
Yeah.
it isn't for a lot of other people who then berate themselves looking at the first group thinking, oh my God,
Absolutely.
my body is different.
Absolutely. It's so funny because it's the smallest things that cause the biggest impact sometimes. I remember when my daughter was 3 months old, I saw a post of another mum who had delivered a couple of months before me, or maybe 7-8 months. And she had posted a picture saying, back to my original weight in 1 year. Right?
Yeah.
And she was really, I was like, great. That stuck in my head, that I have 1 year to come back to my
Yeah.
original weight. I did not even realize it until I was approaching Zeenat's birthday. And I was like, oh my God, I need to lose weight. I need to go on a diet. And I was like, why do I need to be at my original weight by the time she's 1? Like,
Yeah.
who said? Just
Yeah.
because she did it,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything for me and my reality.
Mine
That
was
is not-
9 months. 9 months in, 9 months
9 months
out.
out. Oh my God. And these are these random
Yeah.
like dates and pressures and timelines we
Yeah.
put on ourselves to pressurize ourselves to feeling worse about ourselves.
Yeah.
For what joy?
Yeah.
Like, we would never do that to our children. So why
Yeah.
do we do it to ourselves, right? So at the first year, I was definitely not at the same weight. And I was like, it's okay. I'll give myself another year, maybe 2. I don't know. But the
Wow.
time I stopped looking kind of at the scale and stopped worrying about it is when I felt the best. And in fact, just recently, I hired a trainer and a nutritionist who was making me track my calories and like measure my food. And I did it for 2 weeks and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I just cannot be obsessed with
Yeah.
what is going
Yeah.
on my plate. I want to enjoy my food.
Yeah.
I don't want to measure 35 grams of dark chocolate and then eat it. I want to eat a piece, and sometimes I want to eat 3, and it's okay.
I hear you, girl. I mean, after 10 years of being told I'm heavy, even though I was like much lighter 10 years ago, I feel that it's such a mindset thing. And when I see people around me, and I'm guessing you're even more exposed to this, when I see people around me who've achieved their goals, got to their target weights, but then they'll have one meal, or while they're having the meal, which is the worst thing that I see happening so often, they'll be saying, oh my God, I'm eating this bread, I'm going to have to pay for it. Or, oh my God. While they're putting the food in, imagine what energy is going with the food, right? Just have the bloody
Absolutely.
bread
Yeah.
and have
food is
like-
not meant to be paid for by a
Yeah.
workout. That's not
So-
how it works.
So yeah, I'm very much on the journey of unlearning this kind of, I suppose, the hustle we bring into food as well, right?
Yeah.
The bro mentality that we bring into making everything a number, making everything such a report card thing. And I mean, if it's taken me 2 years, then it'll take me more. It's a lifelong thing that we're constantly
Exactly.
going to work upon. So
And in fact, I was recently thinking I wanna go to someone who actually teaches about intuitive eating.
I have a reference for you.
Oh, good.
Later.
Because I feel like, and I mean, talk to me about that, because I feel like that's the only thing I want to learn now. I don't want to learn anything else.
So there's been a constant. So I'm working with someone, and I'll obviously share details later. Her name is Raksha, and my chats with her are not about food. They're about slowing down, slowing the hustle down, being more present. Because from a place of being present, you can't really overeat. And even when we think that we're present, like both of us think that we're more present than we were, let's say 5 years ago,
which is true.
which is true,
Yeah.
to get to the point of being so in tune with our body that we don't eat that extra piece, we don't kind of have the drink that is not required,
Right.
is the next place that we want to get to. Because for me, the decision was, I never want to be that person who gets to their goal weight and then has to count or think about every cup of chai I'm having, or every cup of like whatever I'm having. Yes, this might be a slower transformation, or if this is it, then I accept and myself wholly and fully
And you
as
also
I
look
am
great, by
right
the
now.
way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are always so nitpicky with ourselves that I feel that's kind of a conversation that we need to have
Yes.
separately. But the one weight thing that's been helping me, because you often end up at doctor's appointments, right? I mean, one shouldn't, but one does end up going, and then they do vitals. I make up a number now.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You make up a number?
I make up a number. They're like, oh, stand on the scale. I'm like, no, I just did today morning, and this is the number. Again, it's going back to numbers. And also, you know what doesn't help me is that I'm a numbers girl. I
You
don't
are a
forget
number.
numbers. I don't
Right.
forget numbers, and they have a very heavy, intense impact on me. So it's the same philosophy with the number on the bank account screen having so much power on me, the number on the weighing scale having so much power on us. And even when I've regulated myself, stepped on the scale from a regulated place, that number sticks in my subconscious.
Yes.
So I've decided to take the number back, and I make up a number.
I love it.
Because if I'm feeling great, if I'm being
stealing
active,
it.
go for it. It's yours.
Yeah.
From now.
And also manifest it, right? Just say the number you want. Just like, I am now 65.
Actually, someone told me that I stopped stepping on the scale, and 2 years later, when I really had to, in a position that she couldn't avoid, she was at her goal weight. While she was obsessing about it for all these years, she never got to it.
I love
And I
that.
was like, you know what? The number can
just a
sort
number.
itself.
Yeah.
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 What do you see for yourself in the future, Shazia? I'd love to end with, what is Shazia investing in? not stocks. We'll speak about that later.
I was like, do you want me to tell you my stock portfolio?
No. Not now.
So currently, I am investing. I recently left BNI, which was a really big one for me.
Yes.
But it was a very big step in taking back my time, because I think that's the one thing we all have a limited resource of, and you
Yes.
have to be more mindful of where you're spending it. So coming up is a new studio in Dubai South.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. We're moving in with Abbas's entire family into a big family home.
Wow.
9 of us living together. So
Which was your doing,
Was
I
my
mean.
idea, my schematics. I schemed this to be a reality. So I'm very excited about that. Our house is being made
Yeah.
right now. And I mean, just enjoying my daughter growing up, honestly.
So I feel there's so much like grounded energy around not calculating time while being present
Yeah.
with the time that you get with Zenith. And I think with the whole family angle as well, I take a lot of inspiration in what you've previously told me as well. In, having a bigger setup is the village that you need to
Yeah.
almost free yourself
Yes.
a little.
Yes.
Not
then you don't
distant.
have to do all the parenting, when there's a
Yeah.
village. They can do some part of it. I don't want to do all the parenting, dude. Right now, I'm forced to because I'm the only one parenting.
But that comes from a space of security that, even if there are 6 adults around, she knows I'm her mom and she'll come back to me. This sounds very obvious, but for me, this has been a learning journey. I mean, there were times where I was insecure of, the nanny being preferred, etc., etc.
So I think nanny, this thing we've all had at some point in the first year, all of us. It's you can't because they are spending more time with your child. Some days more than you are. And you're like, oh my God, she's going to love the nanny more. But with other family members, like recently my mom was here and she refused to leave my dad to come to me. I was like, Zini, give mama a hug. And she's like, no, Nana. So mom's like, oh, mama's getting insecure and jealous. And I was like, no.
I just want a hug.
All. Like, what? You know what I mean? But this is going back to that thing I was talking about of 70%.
Yeah.
Like when you delegate a part of parenting, they're not going to do it the way you would do it.
Yeah.
But as long as they do 70%, it's okay. It's not going to be everything I want to do, but someone else is doing it. So let them.
And also that doesn't make Zeenat or kids any less important because if you've delegated part of that does not make them less important because it's very much about quality over quantity in this case.
Exactly.
To end this fantastic conversation, to all our viewers, because the brand is called She Invests as well, what would you tell the women listening to us to invest in? What should she invest in?
Ooh, nice. So we've all heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And yet I feel women pour from empty cups every single day.
Yeah.
So many times. But every so often, invest in yourself. Invest in giving yourself a little bit of time, space, energy, guilt-free. Because we all need a little bit of you to be you so that everybody around you can have some of it.
I love that. This has been the unanimous answer that everyone's given, but you said it so well. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and energy with us.
I love being here, Cal. Thank you.
I will share all your details for people to be able to follow you, to come to your classes, to the studio in the description. And we'll carry on with these fantastic chats on and off camera.
Yes.
Thank you, Shaz.
Thank you.